Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine a child sitting quietly at a family gathering, surrounded by laughter and celebration, but utterly invisible. No gift, no words, no recognition. What happens when the people who are supposed to love us most turn their backs in silence? This isn't just about a missing present, it's about a deeper wound, the kind that lingers long after the wrapping paper is gone. Tonight's story will take you through the fragile moments of love, neglect, and the fierce fight to be seen and valued. Stay with us, because sometimes the most powerful gifts aren't under the tree. They're the ones we give each other when no one else will. Let's step inside this family's Christmas and discover what really happens behind closed doors. The scent of pine and cinnamon hung thick in the air, mingling with the soft murmur of Christmas music and the clinking of glasses. Through the grand bay windows of Margaret's sprawling Chicago home, snowflakes drifted lazily to the ground, blanketing the city in a hushed white. Inside, the house buzzed with laughter and warmth, or so it seemed. Emma sat quietly in the corner of the living room, her small fingers nervously twisting the edges of a handmade Christmas card. The glow from the fireplace cast dancing shadows across her freckled face, but her eyes, wide, curious, and a little too knowing for a 9-year-old, were clouded with something heavier. She wore a red velvet dress, its softness a stark contrast to the cold weight settling deep in her chest. Her father, Michael, glanced at her from across the room. His jaw was tight, his smile polite but forced. Michael loved this family, or at least the idea of it. The stories, the traditions, the festive gatherings. But every year, the same quiet fracture grew wider. Emma, his daughter, was the crack in the perfect glass. Margaret, the matriarch, moved through the crowd with practiced grace, greeting cousins and nephews with well-rehearsed warmth. Her eyes skimmed over Emma like a page she'd already read, giving her nothing but a distracted nod. There was a sharpness beneath that nod, a cold judgment hidden behind her smile. Emma had spent the past 3 nights perfecting her card for Margaret. She had folded golden glitter along the edges and written, in her neatest handwriting, "Merry Christmas, Grandma." She imagined the smile it would bring, the soft hug that would follow. But Margaret's silence told a different story. Michael caught his wife's eye. Rachel sat beside him, holding Emma's small hand in hers, their fingers entwined in quiet solidarity. Rachel felt the tension coil tighter with every passing moment. The unspoken rule that Emma was somehow not quite part of this family, not quite deserving of the same kindness, the same attention. The gift exchange began with the usual cheer. Cousins' names were called out one by one. Connor, Emma's cousin, beamed as he tore through wrapping paper. Chloe laughed as she held her new doll. Ryan showed off his remote-controlled car with a victorious grin. The room buzzed with joy, but Emma's name remained unspoken. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest as she counted the gifts beneath the tree. There were no packages labeled for Emma, no hidden boxes tucked behind the stockings, no accidental surprises. Nothing. Emma's forced smile faltered for a heartbeat before she tucked her card into her lap, folding her hands as though bracing against the cold. She didn't ask why. She didn't cry. She simply became smaller, folding herself into the shadows of a family that refused to see her. Michael's fingers clenched around a stocking hung near the fireplace. Slowly, deliberately, he reached behind it and pulled out a plain white envelope. The room quieted instantly, conversations stalling mid-sentence, eyes turning toward him. "This," Michael said, voice steady and loud enough to slice through the tension, "was supposed to be opened last." He handed the envelope to Emma. She looked up, startled, the fragile hope flickering in her eyes. Slowly, she peeled open the flap and pulled out 2 tickets, first-class round trip to Iceland. At the place she had dreamed of since she was little, the place where the sky danced with northern lights and streetlights faded into nothingness. A hush fell over the room. Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. The warm glow of the fireplace suddenly felt like an unforgiving spotlight on every unspoken word and every withheld gift. Emma's lips trembled as she read the note enclosed. "For the girl who brings light wherever she goes. Let's chase the northern lights this year. Iceland awaits. Love, Dad." For the first time that evening, Emma's smile was real. She threw her arms around Michael, burying her face in his shoulder, letting herself be seen. Rachel squeezed Michael's hand. This was more than a trip. It was a reckoning. But as the family shifted uneasily around the room, one question burned louder than any gift or greeting. How could a child be so utterly invisible in her own family? And what would it take to finally break the silence? Was love enough to heal wounds inflicted by years of neglect? Could one moment of recognition undo a lifetime of being overlooked? The snow outside fell heavier, mirroring the weight settling over the room. And as Emma clutched the envelope close, the night held its breath, waiting for the next move. The story was far from over. What would happen when the lights faded and the family was left to face what had truly been hidden beneath the surface all along? Would the fragile threads of connection hold, or would they finally snap? Stay with me as the truth unfolds and the silence is broken. The morning after the Christmas gathering felt different, charged, fragile, like the calm just before a storm. Emma woke early, the envelope and tickets still clutched in her small hands beneath the covers. Michael and Rachel watched her from the doorway, silent witnesses to a moment of quiet triumph, shadowed by the weight of what had come before. Yet beneath the surface of this fragile victory, a deeper battle simmered. Michael could feel it stirring in the depths of his wife's heart. A war between loyalty and truth, between the family she was born into and the family she vowed to protect. Rachel's eyes, usually so full of warmth, were clouded now with a storm of doubt and fear. Margaret's absence at breakfast was the first sign that the fragile peace of the previous night was unraveling. Her chair remained empty, the silverware untouched, a cold void at the table where she had always ruled with quiet authority. Michael knew that Margaret was furious not only at being publicly challenged, but at the unspoken truth that had been laid bare for all to see. Later that day, Michael's phone buzzed with a message from his sister, Sarah. The words were polite but laced with an icy undercurrent. "Mom's upset. This trip it's causing more trouble than it's worth. Maybe we should talk." Michael's chest tightened. Family was supposed to be sanctuary, but sometimes it was a battlefield, and tonight the ground was shifting beneath his feet. Rachel placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You did the right thing," she whispered, but even as she said it, the tremor in her voice betrayed her fear of the fight to come. Emma, for her part, was caught between excitement and confusion. The dream of Iceland shimmered brightly in her mind, but so did the memory of the cold silence, the absent gift, the invisible place she'd been forced to occupy in the family she barely recognized. That afternoon, as Michael prepared for a meeting with Margaret and Sarah, Rachel found herself alone with Emma. The little girl's wide eyes searched hers. "Mom, do you think Grandma will ever understand? Do you think she's sorry?" Rachel swallowed hard. How could she explain the complicated dance of love and resentment, pride and pain that played out in those walls? Instead, she pulled Emma close and said, "Sometimes, people hurt the ones they love because they don't know how to show it any other way. But you are loved, and that will never change." The conversation left Rachel hollow. She wondered how many Christmases lay ahead, each a replay of this painful script until someone finally rewrote the ending. The confrontation with Margaret later that evening was tense beyond words. Margaret's voice was calm but brittle, her eyes sharp as she accused Michael of embarrassing the family and breaking tradition. Michael, steady but firm, refused to back down. He spoke of his daughter's right to be seen, to be loved, to be included. "What about respect?" Margaret shot back. "You made a scene. You humiliated us all." "Maybe it's time we stopped pretending," Michael said quietly, and started being honest. "Because silence has been the real humiliation all along." Margaret's face tightened, but something in Michael's words lingered. A truth too heavy to deny. Back in the kitchen, Sarah watched the exchange with conflicted eyes. The family she grew up in was fracturing, and she wasn't sure where she stood anymore. The perfect facade was crumbling, revealing scars that had been hidden for years. As Michael and Rachel left that night, Emma nestled between them in the back seat, clutching her card and the white envelope like lifelines. The city lights blurred past, but for once, the future felt uncertain. in a way that held both fear and hope. Michael glanced at Rachel. What if this changes everything? What if we lose more than we gain? Rachel met his gaze steadily. Then we fight, because some truths are worth the cost. But even as they spoke, the shadows of doubt crept in. Could the family survive this reckoning, or would the cost prove too high? Emma's whispered words from the back seat broke the silence. Mom, will I ever really belong? The question hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. What do you think about Michael's choice to confront the family? Was it an act of bravery, or did it risk tearing them apart? Have you ever faced a moment where standing up for someone you love meant challenging everything you once believed? The night was far from over, and the battle for Emma's place in the family had only just begun. What would the dawn bring? And would the bonds that hold them together be strong enough to withstand the coming storm? Keep reading to find out what happens next. The weeks that followed were filled with a fragile kind of peace, an uneasy truce between hope and hurt. Michael and Rachel poured their energy into preparing for the trip to Iceland, each detail a quiet rebellion against the shadows of that Christmas night. Emma, her eyes bright with anticipation, filled their home with dreams of shimmering skies and silent snowfields. Yet beneath the surface, the fractures in their family's foundation ran deep. Margaret's cold silence was a constant reminder that some wounds refused to heal easily. Invitations stopped coming. Phone calls went unanswered. The walls that once enclosed a family now echoed with absence. One evening, as the first snow of the season began to fall again, Michael found himself alone with Emma. She sat cross-legged on the living room floor, the Iceland tickets spread before her like treasures. Her gaze was distant, her small voice barely above a whisper. "Dad," she said, "do you think Grandma will ever say she's sorry?" Michael's heart ached. He knelt beside her, tracing a finger along the edge of the ticket. "I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people carry their pride like armor, too heavy to take off." Emma nodded slowly, the weight of grown-up understanding settling on her young shoulders. "I just want to know that I mattered." "You matter more than anyone could ever know," Michael promised. "And sometimes, being chosen by those who truly love us is all that counts." The day they left for Iceland dawned cold and clear. At the airport, Emma clung to her father's hand, her red velvet dress replaced by layers of cozy sweaters and scarves. Rachel kissed them goodbye, her eyes shimmering with tears and unspoken fears. As the plane took off, leaving behind the city lights and the echoes of a fractured family, Emma pressed her face to the window, watching the world blur into clouds. For the first time, she felt the exhilarating mix of freedom and fear, of leaving something behind while stepping towards something new. In Reykjavik, the air was crisp and clean, and the sky stretched wide and endless. Nights were spent bundled under thick blankets, watching the northern lights flicker and dance, a celestial symphony that seemed to reach into Emma's heart, whispering of hope, resilience, and light, even in the darkest times. But the journey wasn't just about the breathtaking sights, it was about healing. In the quiet moments between snowflakes and starbursts, Michael and Emma spoke openly, about pain, about love, about the scars that don't always show but shape us anyway. Back home, the silence from Margaret finally broke. A letter arrived months later, simple and unsigned, but it spoke volumes. An admission of regret, a fragile olive branch extended across the distance. It wasn't a perfect ending, not by a long shot, but it was a beginning. Emma kept her card, the one she never gave, with the gold glitter still bright along its edges. It sat tucked safely in her suitcase, a symbol of a love that was hers to keep, no matter life took her. As years passed, the family never quite returned to the old ways. Some doors closed for good, others opened in unexpected places. But Michael, Rachel, and Emma learned that family is not just the people we're born to, but the ones who stand by us when the world turns cold. And sometimes the brightest lights emerge not from what's given, but from what is fiercely claimed, by courage, by love, and by the unyielding refusal to be invisible. The northern lights faded behind the horizon, but the glow they left in Emma's heart would never dim. What feelings did this story stir in you? Have you ever experienced the bittersweet mix of belonging and exclusion? Share your thoughts below, and if this story touched you, type 100 to show your support. Where are you watching from today? Please share this story with friends who might need to hear it. Thank you for being here and for watching Life Stories.